What? Hi, welcome everybody to another edition of Carolina Poets Live. We are super excited to be with you here for the second Thursday reading this month. We will be back here again on March 31st. So we're kind of actually doing the last Thursday in March as well. But I'm Kimberly Sims. Normally you would have Andrew K. Clark here, but he unfortunately was out of town tonight. So I have jumped in for him. But we do have a really great lineup of poets for you this evening. We're going to be hearing from Sarah Blackman, Allison Hedge Coke, and Montavis Mooring. So we're very excited about this great lineup. If you are new to this program, some of you may be watching us on the Carolina Poets Facebook page. Some of you may be watching on the Carolina Poets YouTube channel, and some of you may be watching on Wits and Poetry, which is our nonprofit, their Facebook page. If for some reason you get called away or you miss the show, it will be archived. So if you enjoyed tonight's reading, definitely share that with your Facebook friends or other friends that you have. As always, we're always happy to get to present another three poets here tonight. I'm just kind of chatting away, giving everyone a chance to get onto the feed. But we did start this back in March of 2020, just as an opportunity for all those authors whose book tours were canceled at the beginning of the pandemic. But we've been having so much fun. We've kind of kept it going, and we're actually celebrating 2 years of doing Carolina Poets now, which is just unbelievable that we've now been doing this for 2 years. So thank you, audience, for supporting us and continuing to tune in every week. But I'm not going to take up too much of the reader's time because we do have a really great lineup of poets. The order tonight is going to be Sarah Blackman, and then Allison Hedge Coke, and then Montavis Mooring. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sarah. Sarah Blackman is the Director of Creative Writing at the Fine Arts Center, an arts-dedicated public high school in Greenville, South Carolina. That's actually my alma mater. I went to the Fine Arts Center. Her poetry and prose has been published in a number of journals and magazines, including the Virginia Quarterly Review, Zoetrope, the Georgia Review, Denver Quarterly, American Poetry Review, Conjunctions, and the Missouri Review, among others. She's been featured on the Poetry Daily website and anthologized in the Poets Against the War anthology, Best New American Voices, and Meta Writings, Towards a Theory of Nonfiction, and Orpheus. And also 50 New Myths, which was nominated for a World Fantasy Award in 2014. Blackman is the founding editor of Crash Test, an online magazine for high school age writers, which she edits alongside her students at the Fine Arts Center. Her story collection, Mother Box, was the winner of the 2012 Ronald Sukenick American Book Review the 2012 Ronald Sukenick and American Book Review Innovative Fiction Prize, and was published by FC2 in 2013. Her novel, Hex, was published by the same press in April 2016. In 2018, she joined the board of FC2. So, audience, if you wouldn't mind giving a very warm welcome to Sarah Blackman. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and just really honored to be asked. So thank you for reading that long bio. But the most important part was right at the beginning, which is that I teach at the Fine Arts Center here in Greenville, South Carolina. And I just feel so happy and lucky to be able to work with young people every day who want to talk about writing. That's not something to take for granted. So
yes, and
so thank
y'all
you.
have some talented kids over there too. There's so many good ones. Well, I'm going to pop backstage and let you have all your time, but I will see you back here in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody who tuned in. to my parlor. So here we are in my parlor. I'm going to read you some pieces from a new-ish manuscript that I'm working on. The manuscript's called Panorama because I was thinking about like panoramic photographs and how when the shape changes the way we think about where we stand to look at the image, right? So if we think of kind of a regular kind of rectangular photographic print, we're kind of thinking of the center as the focus of our attention. But in a panorama, you can enter it almost from any place and it becomes the focus of our attention. So I wrote these poems sort of thinking of my own life now that I'm probably in the middle of it. I just turned 42, so I feel like that's probably the middle. I was thinking of my own life as a place that I can enter from any moment and be in the middle. So this first poem is called Panorama. I'm just going to show it to you. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you can see all the kind of negative space on the page there. One of the things that I do, I'm predominantly a fiction writer, but I started with poetry. And one of the things that I do with poems is I think of them as physical objects before I think of them as kind of cognitive or emotional objects. So this piece, I actually wrote, or pieces like this in the book, I wrote in prose and then took out like all the stuff that didn't like spark joy. So I guess it's a Marie Kondo poem at its heart, and left the blank spaces. So I wanted to think about these things that we don't say or that we say so often we can skip, particularly when I'm writing about my family, which these blank space poems are often about my family. So this one's called Panorama. The swing he swung from high sycamore, a plank, a knotted rope, his back turned, resting. We had a corner lot, lucky, a privet hedge, mask or mirror. Beloved cats nipped short by bad black labs. The red ant I put down his shirt and smashed. Damp back, a dark hair springing from his dark, flat mole. Joy in the dogwood, joy in the forsythia. This is a poem about my father, striding with sledgehammer to bust shit up. Tender, incomplete improvement, hacking the trunk, a boil of black beetles rising. The curb loops a boundary line around white wrought iron bench and loving each other, the nature of a boundary to exclude. My father planted Jack in the pulpit just beyond the scar, bulb from his mother's garden, which she dug from, Anna Louise, born Virginian and in slave days, but white, so come north, fleeing something else. How American, my imagination, which never extends beyond the border of myself. I have been here, afraid of the bright lights, the mirrors whirling. My father sold that house. When in memory I mourn that one red ant, perhaps I did it only to be cruel. I think I will go back and dig the flower for him. Nubby preacher in striped pulpit leaning toward truth. My father will think of other places, all he left there, waiting to be finished. How lonely I once was. How lucky to be so loved. Another project I'm doing is thinking about repetition and thinking about repetition as a way of changing words, even if the words don't change. So this next one is a change of pace, and it's called bat. And I was thinking of the word bat and what a fun word that is to say. And also I like bats, like as individuals. This one's called bat. Mad fat bat, singularly noiseless, Mexican, red bat or gray and mighty, large and malevolent, wretched and stupid. A lone brave bat wearing comradely scarlet, single, simple, and horrific, or secret and jubilant, a beautifully soft and silky bat, a bat like a wooden seal cantilevered against the breeze, a tube-nosed bat, appallingly restless, twofold bats, abhorring the bat box we hammered to the house's southeast side, eager bats, balmy and old, mechanical bats, sentimental, unwelcome, occasional bats, half-hearted bats, slow-motion bat like a crumpled handkerchief, a wing, very angry bat, shrieking at dragonflies. Other interested bats emitting stylized squeaks. Additional indoor bats we did not order, perfectly shameless bats haunting the rim of streetlight, bat once in a trash can, small and unassuming, bat hung like a glove from the classroom ceiling, aggressive female bat, animated black bat, badly balanced bat caroming against trees, wrinkled, reactionary, bat, common and characteristic, bat, bat by moonglow dipping down cactus throat, bat of my dreams, tiny and iridescent. Hunky-dory bat, blinking sunstruck eyes, enormous golden bat, an icon of batdom, public school bat, scourge of playground moths, counterfeit bat, full-blown bat. When we consider what we want from this world, we should open our mouths wider, then wider, and see what will fly into them. Bat, you giddy nighttime pinwheel, bat, you drunk commuter of the dusk, bat, we hear you calling back the prodigious tongue of summer to settle humid over your sleep. Bat, we stray into your caves and name what hems us in the mountain's teeth. Overhead, your newborn bittens dream fearsome dreams of flight. A baby bat is not called a bitten, but I wish they were called that. Okay, bats. That is everything you ever need to know about bats. This is another kind of repetition one, and this is about Jenny Greenteeth, who is a river fairy, a river monster who drowns children. And she's Irish, but the Cherokee also have a version of her, and she also shows up in Bengali folklore, and so she's kind of all over the world. But she has lots of names. Jenny Greenteeth is her Irish and her English name. And I kind of spliced Jenny Greenteeth research with the fact that when I was little in my illustrated book of fairies, the picture of her was like the most frightening thing I had ever seen. So here's this poem. Jenny Greenteeth. A river hag, she would pull the children down and drown them. Imagine the beloved body surrounded by its thin field of light. Under a continuous mat of weed grown over the surface of a small body of water. That light snuffed or scattered, the mirror's surface shattered, prism of each droplet sheared, making it misleading. Green-skinned with long hair and sharp teeth, Ginny Greenteeth, wicked Jenny. When grief comes, it will wash like water, smoothing stone into a shape separate from earth. Ginny Greenteeth, or Jeannie Greenteeth, lurking in the upper branches of trees at night, stone in the river, earth underwater. Ginny Hewlett, sitting on top of a rock, and in the water, all the living things that move as water moves on the banks, all the living things who come only once before the twilight, combing her long black hair with a gold comb. As a child, I was afraid. If our eyes meet, terrible things will happen. Storm hag, Jenny Greenteeth. breeds dangers and shipwrecks, a green-skinned woman with teeth like an eel's, but green, piercing, of grief's long arms reaching out to pull me in a new dim world as the green weeds close above, yellow eyes, who rests on the bottom of the lake and sings a song. I imagine the unbeknownst as it slides past me, and I, transfixed, to sailors sliding by, bewitched by the homeward voyage, by my own wavering shadow, until waves bend by my own glittering core, their bow down, becoming more purely myself, devouring them as I diminish, as they diminish. Okay. Kind of picking and choosing here, as one does. Okay, this one's a little bit funny, maybe. It's a true story, too, which is exciting because it's a ghost story. About a weird house I lived in college when I lived in a weird town in Maryland. So this really happened. It's called Scary Story. 1. Small colonial era town. Silly cocktail. Smoked a joint. The living room blinked like an owl. D.H. Lawrence novel at whatever hour. Set the scene. 1840s, 1700s, 1930s, 2 ghosts to each floor, 6 apartments, all with the same floor plan. There was a long, straight, rickety, wooden, outdoor ghost. A central ghost led up to each apartment door. The lights were always blown, the stairwell window ghost swollen open or closed. The whole ghost thing was a serious security hazard for a woman living alone. I was 20, haunted. The house was very full, like I had just stepped into The house was very full, like I had just stepped into a ghost office, and everyone turned to see the ghost at the door, rustling, or footsteps carpeted, as if a ghost was walking away from me. Quiet noises, nearby noises, filtering up from below. I slept in the ghost on the left-hand side. I shared a ghost with the stairwell. Every night I heard footsteps, the sliding latch, the little screwdriver screwing. I latched the bedroom door, but the ghost never turned. The ghosts made me uneasy. The ghosts didn't really care about me. Ghosts got where they were going and disappeared. Really fucking weird ghost. Winter light, gray, flat. The ghosts in the apartment make it cheerful. In the shower, facing the shower head, ghost in a brown suit holding a brown hat over his chest, pale ghost, long nose, wet from the shower spray. He looked at me and then gone. Okay. I rinsed my hair. We both startled each other. The ghost in the shower, a traveling sales ghost, laundromat ghost sorting his whites, ghost who said, top shelf please at 3 a.m, ghost mumbling Master P in the bookstore, ghost with a bottle, ghost with a rope, ghost with only hands at the end of his wrists, ancient ghost who drilled a hole in the wall, ghost who wrote a song about it, ghost peeping in the window, ghost who used to live here and still has the key. Ghost I traveled hundreds of miles to visit, stranger ghost pissing in the backyard, ghost who gets like that when he drinks, ghost whose feelings are easily hurt, ghost who stands with his back to me, ghost who drives around the block looking for parking, a little shabby, a little provisional, ghosts. They definitely seemed like they were on their way somewhere else. Nearby noises. No ghost cared if I was already asleep. Ghosts making a racket in the afterlife. 2. I remember living with a cat. I love cats, but I didn't have a cat then. As far as I know, no cat ever entered the apartment the whole time I lived there. I picture myself coming home. I envision a cat standing on the arm of the sofa. I picture myself cooking. I imagine shooing a cat off the table. Even when I lived, I kept forgetting I didn't have a cat. Like every night, where's the cat? Gray cat, green eyes, white spot above his nose. No more fucking ghosts. It's my hope that cat is still there, waiting for me. So that's another repetition one where the word ghost starts to sound really weird when you say it that often. I guess as anything does. Okay, so this one is kind of prose poem-y. Well, it is prose. It's a prose poem. So it looks like that. Oh, where does it look? There we go. It looks like that. Big block of text. This is another true story, but I don't think there's any ghosts in this one. But this is like from the same time period, being 20 and not knowing what on earth was going on. Moon of making fat. At 22, I drove with a lover across the country and wept all the way to Kentucky. At night, he steered us past a ghost plant. Oh, there's a ghost, but it's just a plant. At night, he steered us past a ghost plant streaming blue light into the darkness. I could not stop seeing its haze, and the way the light it made insisted it was not nature and that I could not disregard it. It was a pit in the hip pocket of the mountain, tooth-scarred stone. I was afraid. I was afraid almost all the time then, although I had so much less to be afraid for. Later in the journey, driving west across the high northern plains, we saw 2 tornadoes touch down many miles below us. The funnels came from a band of black clouds sheared like Betty Page bangs over the plush gold stripes of sunset. We watched them churn across what to us seemed to be a vast emptiness, but was, in the way of all emptiness, actually full of specific and irreplaceable life. In the Badlands, I found the tip of an ancient rib and pocketed it. We peeked at each other through sky holes because then we were still in love, though all the weeping and a rapacious yeast infection acquired somewhere around Missouri had started to eat away at our foundations. I was built on sand, slippery dunes where the tall grasses could not root. In California, I went for long walks and picked kumquats off a tree that sprawled beside the old folks' home. The colors were dun and olive and shocking tangerine. I dove into the pool thick with algae. I made the sounds of prehistoric birds. Was it my fault the way 2 people love each other can become rancid over time? Is it my fault all the conclusions I draw are about myself? Sometimes the moon would rise in California in the self-satisfied style of a movie star. Sometimes it was cold and distant as a dime glimpsed through a storm grate. I've never belonged to the seasons of the world the way I might have if I were born in another century. That too is my fault because in the end, who else are you going to blame? The moon? A kumquat? Once I thought I saw a puma stalking me and then pretended not to stalk me because I had seen him and our eyes met. At the end of that hike, I turned around and a man was standing right behind me. I come up here and smoke a joint in celebration of the skyline, the man said. He was my age at the time, and now he is still my age, the perfect age to celebrate the skyline, though we have never met again. Do you want to smoke a joint with me? He asked. I said no, and that is only one of my many regrets. I hold them all to me like a layer of fat against the winter cold. Keep me warm, I ask the past. Keep me weighted to the earth. This one here is another one of these kind of erasure poems, blank space poems. It's called Family / History, and I'm just going to read a few more. Family history. My grandmother, top of the stairs, pressing the typewriter's keys. Her 5 children, tormenting themselves, swept up in the dream of capitalism. My grandmother was close to death, pages, one by one, marbled into the computer. Capitalism dictates entropy and personhood. In other words, supremacy. There is not enough sun. Some people are just going to die. Difficult policy for women. Is it okay to say that? The father of my children being a good man in a world that expects rut and wallow. The fetus was a girl. His shoulders drifted down, his back curved, a terrible weight released, tiny, articulate feathers poured from lead. In the dark, hollow, liquid sound, I did not hear the sound of him. What has been done to men, they will be allowed to parent a child instead of devour them. My grandmother's book, in pencil at the top of the stairs, fictional biography of Nefertiti, my grandmother, down the Nile, a pearl-handled Derringer tucked into her purse, surrounded by ancient columns, black and white, her skin the sheen of silly putty, my grandmother firm and amused. Instead, the sepia tones turn her head, blue and green, fields perhaps. My mother has never recovered, not in a capitalist system. My mother at the foot of the stairs looking up, I'm not ashamed. Eventually, we all run out, not after life, but after my grandmother. I love you. I love you. I just want to eat you up. I'm going to read one itty bitty one and then one last one, and then I'll be done taking up your screen for the evening. So thank you again for tuning in, for virtually coming to this event. And thank you very much to Carolina Poets for hosting it and to Kimberly Sims for introducing me. Okay, these are these weird little well, they're all weird. Everything I do is weird. These are little kind of sestinas that do not do what sestinas do. This is called Spring. In spring, the toad hustles through soon-to-be new-sprung vines, but are now just as brown as his suede soft hide, his golden eyes, his unpleasant taste. He is so loud because everyone anticipates how foul he will fill their mouths, though I think what a dangerous gamble, given the way teeth snick shut and crush between them bone. Even his long, slender legs and the fat clasp of his ribs, even his broad skull built to bull through new-sprung vines in search of grub or fly or waterspout or intrigue. If I put a planter pot over top him, he would blink in darkness, waiting for me to lift it again. So sure is he, I want him for nothing more than pleasure, which is what to him is nothing to one bent on his own ventures. This is the last one. It's another one of these like non-sonnets. Sonnets in name only, and otherwise not. It's called Salt. Coming around again to ancient Rome, the children are bartering salt in the lunch line because the potatoes are limp and leave no slick on the lips. Lovelorn at 10, I traded my long, slow sadness for glasses, like the ones Sally Jesse Raphael wore on television when she pronounced everybody's problems unsolvable. This was before we knew how to breathe through our noses, before we looked under our seats expecting to find miracles, never mind the taxes or the upkeep or trimming the hedge with an electric saw taped to the end of a long steel pole to please the HOA. I once tried to go so fast, get the lawn done before a storm, that I tripped and pulled the mower over my legs. He'll find me dead and the lawn half shagged, I thought, before I didn't bleed or die, and also didn't finish when the storm broke and sent lightning all around like a new and interesting scar. What did you do this summer? Nothing much. I'll give you 15 packets for one single kiss. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was awesome. Really enjoyed it. And if people want to get more information about you, I did share the link for fc2.org. Is there anywhere else people should go to get your work?
FC2 is where my books are out. And then I think if you just Google me, some things will pop up online. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. We really appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thank y'all for tuning in. I'm so excited about our next two poets. We've already had such a great start to the evening. Next up, we're going to be bringing up Allison Adelle Hedge Coke's Allison Adelle Hedge Coke's latest book is Look at This Blue from Coffee House Press in 2022. She is a UC Riverside Distinguished Professor who comes from working fields, factories, horses, and waters in North Carolina, and is the author of several North Carolina-centric books. Her 2021-22 honors include Texas Institute of Letters Induction, the 2021 AWP George Garrett Award, and an inaugural Legacy Individual Artist Fellowship from the California Arts Council. So please give a warm virtual welcome to Allison.
Okay, I think I got my mic on. It was great to listen to Sarah. And thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, All Things Carolina Poets. A little homecoming for me, so I'm exceptionally pleased.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pop backstage, and so I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to start with a piece I haven't read for a very long time. It is The Change. 13 years ago, before bulk barns and fifth-gear diesel tractors, we rode Royal Blue tractors with toolboxes big enough to hold a six-pack on ice. In the 115-degree summer heat with air so thick with moisture, you drink as you breathe. Before the year, duster sprayed malathion over our clustered bodies, perspiring while we primed the bottom lugs, those ground-level leaves of tobacco, and it clung to us with the black tar so sticky we rolled 8-inch balls off our arms at night and Cloroxed our clothes for hours and hours before we were poisoned, and the hospital thought we had been burned in fires, at least to the 3rd degree, when the raw oozing hives that covered 98% of our bodies from the sprays ordered by the FDA and spread by landowners, before anyone had seen automated machines that top and prime, while we topped the lavender blooms of many tiny flowers, gathered into one, gorgeous, by grasping hold below the petals with our bare calloused hands and twisting downward, quick, hard, only one time, snap them off. Before edgers and herbicides took what they call weeds, we walked for days through 30 acres and chopped them out with hoes made long before from wood and steel, and sometimes even longer ago from wood and deer scapula. Before the bulk primers came, we primed all the leaves by hand, stooped over at the waist for the lower ones, and through the season, gradually rising higher until we stood and worked simultaneously, as married to the fields as we were to each other, carrying up to 50 pounds of fresh leaves under each arm and sewing them onto sticks 4 foot long on a looper underneath the shade of a tin roof barn made of shingle, and poking it up through the rafters inside to be caught by a hanger who poked it up even higher in the rafters to another who held a higher position, and so They filled the barn, and the leaves hung down like butterfly wings, though sometimes the color of Luna moss or Carolina parakeets, when just an hour ago they had been laid upon the old wooden cart trailers pulled behind the orange Alice Chandler tractor with huge round fenders and only a screwdriver and salt in the toolbox. Picked by primers so hot, we would race through the rows to reach the 25-gallon jugs of water placed throughout the field to encourage, in an attempt to satisfy our insatiable thirst for drinking air, which poured through our pores without breaking through to our need for more water in the sun. Some we imagined to disappear, and yet respected for growing all things on earth, when quenched with rains called forth by our song and drumming. Leaves which weeks later would be taken down, and the strings pulled like string on top of a large dog food bag, and sheeted up into burlap sheets that bundled over 100 pounds, and we smashed down with our feet, but gently smashing, then thrown up high to a catcher on a big clapboard trailer, pulled behind 2-ton trucks and taken to market in Fuquay Varina and sold to Philip Morris in Winston-Salem for around $1 a pound. Leaves cured to a bright leaf, a golden yellow, with the strongest aroma of tobacco barn curing and hand-grown quality before the encroachment of big business in the Reagan era and the slow murder of method from 100 years before. When the loons cried out in laughter by the springs and the bass popped the surface on the pond early on next to the fields, before that time when it was unfashionable to transplant each individual baby plant, the infant tobacco we nurtured, to transplant those seedlings to each hill in the field, that space for that particular plant, and we watched as they would grow. Before all of this new age, new way, I was a sharecropper in Willow Springs, North Carolina, as were you, and we were proud, wishing for winter when we could make camp at Qualla Boundary and Oconaluftee would be free of tourists and filled with snow. And those of us who held out forever would be home again with our people when we still remembered before Europeans working now shoulder to shoulder with descendants of their slaves they brought from Africa, when they sold our ancestors as slaves into the Middle East, that the tobacco was sacred to all of us, and we prayed whenever we smoked and did not smoke for pleasure, and I was content and free. Then they came and changed things, and you left me for a fancy whiter girl, and I waited on the land until you brought her back, and that brand new white Trans Am purchased from our crop you gave her, and left her waiting in a hotel. The nearest one was 40 miles away, but near enough for you and for her. I knew, though I never spoke a word to you about it, I knew, and I kept it to myself to this day and time. I never let on until I left on our anniversary. I drove the pickup down the dirt path by the empty fields and rented a shack for $80, one with cardboard windows and a Gillespie house floor design, with torn and faded floral paper on walls and linoleum so thin over rotted board that the floor gave if you weighed over 100 pounds, and then I did not. And with no running water of any kind, nor bathroom, the one at Hilltop, where I could see out across the fields and hunt for meat when I wanted and find peace. I heard you remarried and went into automated farming and kept up with America, and I watched all of you from the hill, and I waited for the lavender blooms to return, and when it was spring, even the blooms had turned white. I rolled up my bedroll, remembering before, when the fields were like waves on a green ocean, and turned away from the change and corruption of big business on small farms, of traditional agricultural peoples and sharecroppers, away so I could always hold this concise image of before that time, and it floods my memory. And I was in the 70s, the first woman to do construction in Raleigh, North Carolina, off-season from sharecropping. And I worked for Inland Construction One of the carpenters I trained with, Al, is still there. Most of the company is changed. This is off season. Early on grayest morning, when we nettled deep in between rows, tobacco and sweet potato, about 2 seasons away from planting, you reasoned I belonged there, flowing like creek water below our bright leaf fields, then showing only golden stubble and root. You said I'd never make it, swinging hammers and teething saws for inland construction. I raised my back wings, those muscles wrought from priming rows, muscles which cradled my ribs and sides. I chucked tools into the flatbed and headed north to the cities sprawled out like scattered masonry and split rails. Raleigh, smoked factory winds and speakeasy halls. A white chicken fell off a Tyson rig just a bit ahead of me on Saunders Street. I called her Hooker from walking down the red light road. The inland guy hiring was big and red. He sat behind a door laid flat for a desk on cinder block. He chuckled, much like you, at the sight of me. But the fields and breaking horses justified my then 90 pounds of lean. The next day, he had me start out on a crew full of men who'd never seen a woman work that way in town. It was the first time I had a chance to operate a backhoe, the first time I got to frame. And when I swung the hammer full leverage, 3 pounds drove in 16 pennies straight. In 6 weeks, I made foreman, just before I drove back to you. Hooker, she almost got pecked to death by our bantams, as citified as she was. I laid out so much money, I beat what you pulled in for fall. We settled in for the long freeze, and you ate ridicule and hate. You never were the same, until spring, when the fields reclaimed us as their own, and we returned to what we both knew and belonged to, the off-season, only an offshoot, and what we were meant to be. You never did know this side of what I am, field worker or framer. I only showed you what you said I couldn't be. And there's a lot more poems, and several of the books are really NC-centric, since I grew up and came of age there and spent most of my young adult life there as well. It's funny because the poem that changed when I wrote that, it was 13 years previous, but the year I was speaking about was 1979. So now it's quite a while back, way more than 13 years. So thank you for allowing me to go back in time and read some of the early work there. I'm going to read a few from Streaming, and those 2 poems came from Dog Road Woman and Off Season City Pipe, both Coffee House, Streaming's with Coffee House as well. And this is Measuring Up. It wasn't socks missing from his feet, nor elbow cloth unraveled unilaterally, not equal displacement of chin and brow, nor the eye that set a little bit lower on the right. It was his knuckle that made me weep. The clove corners gone wayside like minuscule meat hooks clawed away bits of him, each shift he made. Invisible, a timelessness unfurled. It was his muscle torn through and festering. The prosthetic hand, the finger with dismay. All across his attempted grin left there just like that for anyone to see. It was his mercy. In the end, we're rarely beautiful. We're mostly placed away from compromising situations into poses offsetting what has become of us in some gawker's unnerving eyes. Yet he is still here in mine. And I'm human because of it, maybe only. And I'll dedicate this one to Sarah for reading the ghost poems. If you don't have a ghost poem, you're missing out. I have several as well, so I enjoyed hearing those from Sarah. They're pretty great. This is Dublin Crossing. She told an Irish story as well, so this happened in Dublin. Dublin Crossing. Gulls call over the Blackpool morning, a stout night, still sleep. The Blue Boy, the Magdalen laundries, everything echoes past across waters, black-robed, anointed, colonial crimes. 2 days ago on Perce, past Trinity, a young man on his stoop adjusted himself to my eyes and then vanished. The door was left ajar. It was 1:46. Tricks the dead give when we move with them. In life, we bridge rivers, charge halfpenny crossings, trade things, and abandon. In the end, each child crucified splits scene and bides. Every once in a while, I get away with a little love poem. It's a rarity, and this is one of those. This is Summer Fruit. Plums hanging low, summer rain and reggae bomb, below heat here, and a banana cherry slide, just right, just right. Listen, she's telling you now. The innocent plum, the succulent plum, the resonant plum, swing plum like yo-yo rum, like yo-yo rum, like yo-yo rum. A plum over round into palm plum, make it a raspy plum. The firm flesh gives way for finger, thumb, touch teasing, easing plum juice from tantalizing fruit. It spills a plum song, plum love, plum sweet touch to whoever takes some, while summer has its way with us. 'Tis true. Both of us sing raspy plum juice, black cherry throat songs shadowed in dark where duende play, easy light lift from creases, opening flutter. Is summer a box of light, a box of fruit opening, light streaming in all directions, fanning heat and rays spread, sunshine through sheltering shade, the shadow dark embracing, offering light in each give, every bend, every pressing hold, sheltering in radiance resplendent. Look here, sunshine in rain, brilliant, like languages held in secret, traditional tongue kept present, nurtured, sheltered, in shade, sun, light, dark, reed, oboe. Her story, song, love, cradled in every bit of wild planted sweet. How she grew you, how she fills you now. I remember the taste, love. Remember him bringing promises, wine, playing his reed oboe on cotton sheet, spread in the summer swelter, island, mountain, sky, the box of light, shade, plum love, plum sweet touch. Take some. And I'll read a little bit from the new work. And the new work, which is coming out at the end of the month, so I don't even have my galley copies yet, it's coming out on March 29th, is called Look at This Blue. It's the first book I have that doesn't have some sort of essence of NC-centric, except for Blood Run, which is specific to a site on the crux of South Dakota, Iowa, and Minnesota, and Nebraska. That book is not NC-centric, Blood Run, and this one, Look at This Blue, is Calicentric. And I won't go into the whole details of it, but it's an assemblage piece, so it's meant to be read as one piece, and is poetry. It is also a love letter, and it's also an indictment, because I think when you love somebody or love something, you have to hold them accountable as well. And so it's for California. It's called Look at This Blue. So I'll just read a little bit from that. Look at this blue. Arcsis blue butterfly from the sand dunes of San Francisco, the first known American butterfly to become extinct due to humans. First known. Redwood burls, cut like blisters shaved from trunks, poach life source from the root, kills the giants in knobby growth removals, baseline, canopy height, bud tissue, unsprouted genetic code for clone of parent tree emergence, barrel at my mouth, ready cocked, held there by my baby brothers, bared grip. Lemon wedge half moon popping over, the flat consumed shallow, over sweet sound, low rustle and loady water, chorter trill, night language from standing cranes, sandhills, they've been there all along, standing still knee-deep in station pools, Orion hovering eastward, drawn and readied, someone slinks past the door jamb, each chokehold felled, vaporizes cognizance, in a world fast shaking herself loose from diabolical torrent, rising throttle song above a throttle breath, choked out between calligraphies, madness clenched fury, unfurled release, misery met in each pummeled break. It's not over. Sleep in despair, sleep moth-tongued, unrolled against central incisors, human-throated, deep yearns for saxophone, trachea windpipe, crane throat, sandhills chortle, only saving grace, the wetlands marshaled. There's nothing here on guardian watch. It's all going to burn, says the man accused of setting the holy fire. First, the puma in Santa Paula palm branch, then coyotes, fox, rabbits appear, birds overcome sky plume, then the entire yard is a carpet of undulating fleas, so thick wrapping bread bags over feet and ankles barely make it passable, everything escaping heat from fire-stormed arson, 120,000 acres, blanket fired, Los Padres National Forest and more, choking like the child they found, still hung there. Sleep in the dream of bettering world. Sleep in the dream, nightmare awoken. What we carry howls, boggling. Her cheek contorts in flame unfanned yet fanning. She eclipses all asunder, all broken. Scar-face vision in temporal melt. Somewhere on my left face, you can still see where it was sewn back on the abdomen, the line where it was sewn back, sewn back, sewn back, somewhere on my right hand where it was sewn. All the here's and there's were sewn. All the biopsies, removals, explorations, assaults sewn. What we carry weeps, wet-haired. Her cheek contorts when sprayed by guard. From the first time she attempted, her neck still aches. Meanwhile here, a third body in Baldwin Hills fire is found. More missing. Arson again. Someone is out there. She remembered stories. I'm going to end at the end of this little piece. She remembered stories. Grandma's watching over from long ago. Still here, singing comfort. Evening on the chaparral. Rain-soaked creosote releases a smoky scent. Lingers under Pleiades. Coming up on a buck moon. Our governess, she reduces inflammation, rids fungus. Her twigs are bark teas. They hold mysteries. The toxins are medicinal. Property, unfenced, unwalled, and growing for anyone to reap here. Moonlights her tips like Pleiades. 7 little goats, little eyes, 7 sisters, Subaru, pearls, hen with chicks, united, taken there and held, or forever running from maddened machismo, forever unchecked. Forever. Raining stars, sailing stars, mapping out the navigation, accompanied by dual forces, often parental. One turns invisible at will here. She was invisible for a while, headlined for an hour, between the list of the COVID-19 deaths, the hospitalizations, cases soaring in encampments, at detentions, between the borders, nations, between the worlds, hope, kids running from border agents here. She lost her step, her way, before being thrown into the freezer. Assigned foil for blanket, shivering through the shimmering night. Mama. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. And it was so great hearing all that North Carolina landscapes and all those great, all the people that are in North Carolina, the working class, agriculture. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you've muted yourself.
That was me. That was my life. It was all like me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have put into the chat links where you can get Allison's book and her website. And as she mentioned, she does have a new book coming out at the end of March. So definitely circle back with Allison to check that out. Poets really definitely need your support in these interesting times. But I want to go ahead and bring up our next reader tonight, which is Montavis Mooring. Montavis lives in Gaffney, South Carolina. He attended Allen University, where he majored in English and studied writing. He also attended Limestone College, where he studied early childhood education. His work has been featured in Commonline Journal, Albany State University, Upended Words, and other publications. He has performed spoken word poetry at many events throughout the Carolinas. He is a fashion model with an interest in acting. He's currently editing his first poetry collection. So welcome, Montavis.
Hey, good evening.
Good to have you here. I'm just going to pop backstage so we can hear your wonderful poetry, and we'll see you back here in a few minutes.
Okay, that's fine. I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to all of the people at Carolina Poets. It's just humbling that you all considered me for this opportunity. I'm going to get started because I don't want to go past my time. I'm going to start with my first piece. The inspiration behind this piece, I feel, is I was going through a life experience years ago. And going through that experience, I didn't really have any answers as to what I should do in terms of getting through it. Taking advice sometimes is not the easiest thing to do. And a lot of times, in my case, I relied on my understanding. So this piece is entitled Beginning Again, but the ending is an opportunity. Burnt out as if you were one of the light bulbs in the sun 100 or 1,000 years from now. I seen the color of the air you breathe go from one shade to the other before it went into my lungs. The peeled skin from bitten fingernails shows it entering as it bleeds. Your heart is a string, your chest a parachute, only when the wind is taking its time to blow. Skydiving with the one you think is the one. How many times on the way down did you see lava lamp stars orbiting around a cheesecake moon? Orchestras of emotion, but the theater is empty, wrapping all the dead flowers in the world in a bow. There are termites in the wooden time machine doors that once swung on hinges. Go through the door anyway. Step into the flame that would normally be on a candle. Growth is worth the burn. My second piece, Untitled Phase. Try harder after trying hard already. But life is like a junkyard of things you can never seem to get right. Look through the garbage of your choices, hoping to find anything that says you're not that bad. You walk into the doors of dream, a late break from snoring away as many negative thoughts as you can. Running from the past, not caring how dirty your feet will become. Unable to ignore the sound of 1,000 broken clocks. It screams as loud as a trumpet does in the middle of a song. Taking what's left of yourself further from who it was mistakes ago. There is a faint odor in the air. You put too much cologne on your trauma. For my final piece, it's personal. I think what is interesting or most interesting about life is having to find answers to the circumstances, the situations that life presents you with. And this piece is entitled Finding. Arriving as a visitor in whichever era is accepting tourists. None of these generations are looking to add anyone from the future. Stingy with what they have, old souls attempt to take from them what other eras have. Their era doesn't have enough of. Nothing new under the moon. Even their darkness is different. When news broke of someone's era having something different, the rolling stopped, and excitement is heard through the dirt of their grave. Not another variation, they say. Introduction to the same constructive criticism. Millennials write their rebuttals in actions, not words, referencing the secrets of their circumstance inventors, overcoming the impossible. Thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Montavis. I so enjoyed that. You have just got such wonderful imagery in your poetry. Really great job. And if people wanted to follow you, let's say do you have an Instagram where people can support you? What's your Instagram?
It's the poet _ Yeah. Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah, I'm typing it into the chat. At the poet _
Well, let me make sure I don't want to give you the wrong name.
Because if you're on, just for those of you in the audience, if you're on Instagram, it's such a great way to support poets and authors by following them on Instagram, because that actually does help people to get published to show they have a big following. So you said that it's at the poet _
Excuse me, it's the poet, THA _ poet 1994.
Got it. _ poet 1994. Awesome.
Yeah,
so I'm going to throw that in the comments so people can follow you. I'm going to go ahead and bring some of our other Allison. I don't know if Allison's still around, but let me bring Sarah back in so we can chat for just a second. And thank you again to both of you for sharing. Oh, and here's Allison. Thank you, first of all, to all of you for being with us here tonight and blessing our stage with your words. It's really just been such a treat to have you all here tonight. And then I did have one thing that I want to talk about a little bit is this autobiography in poetry, because I noticed that you all have, a lot of poems about your personal experiences. And some poets like to do that. And some poets like to write about things outside of themselves. And I think, Sarah, you have some poems that may appear to not be about yourself, but probably are actually about yourself. So I didn't know if y'all just wanted to talk about, autobiography in your poetry. I can't speak tonight. Allison, do you want to start with we'll talk about this North Carolina poems?
Yeah. I also have like whole books that are persona and are not me. But even in persona, it's still your knowledge base and imagination. So you're still sort of accountable, even when it's fictionalized, not you. But yeah, so the poems I read from fieldwork, I wrote those when I was beginning to take poetry seriously and not just something I was putting in drawers and figured nobody would ever see kind of thing, or writing lyric, because I was a musician for a number of years doing songwriting. Those poems were more to mark my actual past and existence that nobody looking at me ever realizes, and sort of hears the story. And so it was that form of identity writing where you are claiming agency. And I think a lot of autobiographical work is that, or just giving what we know from what we know to audience to deal with what they want. That's for me. Yeah, I don't know.
Awesome. Awesome. Sarah, what about you?
Well, I write predominantly fiction at this point in my life, but I started in poetry, and I feel like when I want to say something that does not have to get filtered through anybody else's perception, when I don't want to have to think about, would my character actually say this or not, I go back to poems, and I just feel like there's such an immediacy and like almost a shock to the senses from getting just to speak for yourself, in my case. So I really do love, even when they are poems that are like just the word bat as many times as I can possibly say it. I'm thinking about all the different ways that I've engaged with that word, that I've engaged with bats. There's always kind of elements of my own personal life and story in them. And I think it's a way of reminding myself as a writer that everything I'm making is a part of that ongoing process of making myself. And you never really stop doing that. And also I'm kind of saying thank you to the people who have been, in my case, thank you. Maybe in other people's cases, it's another two words. But for me, I'm saying thank you to the people who've been with me in that making. So I do write about my family a lot. I write about my partner. I write about my children, for better or for worse, and in a way that I don't get to do in fiction. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Montavis, what about you?
Well, when I first started writing, I was actually doing a lot of personal poetry. It wasn't, it was something that I just felt like I should start doing, just writing about myself. But upon like realizing that writing was a gift of mine, through the advice of several relatives and some of the musicians that I was listening to as a teenager, I don't know. I became interested in just what other people's stories were and experiences were. So I just been on that journey since then. I have a tendency to incorporate small elements of myself, but my preference, however, is to write about others. I feel like, just from the page to the actual experience, for me, it creates this influence that is unique, especially being as a writer and just trying to, I guess, see things from the reader's perspective.
Great, great, absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much for those great comments, because I think that most people, when they first start writing, do start writing about themselves or writing poetry just as a personal, thing they're doing for themselves, and then kind of as they develop, they start feeling like they need to write about other things. But I think Sarah made a great point that it's so fun to write about other things, but it's nice sometimes too, just to be able to talk about yourself a little bit. So thank you all for that wonderful perspective. I did just want to kind of bring up one other topic just before we kind of get off here tonight, and that's just kind of the business of poetry. I know it's been really tough for all of our authors during the pandemic, just with not having access to all the readings and tourings that we normally do. But do you guys have any other readings upcoming, or things that are you starting to noticing more stuff happening now that the world is kind of getting back to normal?
Ladies?
I didn't really see a decline because the circles I'm in all just went virtual immediately. And I switched Writers Week to a virtual forum, and a lot more international things were happening because we had the virtual forums, so people didn't have to travel. So I have several readings coming up in the next couple months and so. But yeah, for me, it made it even easier to do because of the virtual. Yeah, and I think Sarah mentioned that while we were in the green room yet. how nice it was we could get together for North Carolina reading, even though maybe not everyone's in North Carolina this moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that I did my first in-person event last week in Utah. I was at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and I was there for a week working with master's and PhD students, which was amazing. And it was just so awesome to remember that everyone's still out there. But I do feel like moving to virtual platforms means you get to be in community with people in a much broader range than you were in before. So that's really been like a silver lining to an incredibly difficult time for me, has been the ease with which it's been able to sort of connect with people on a digital platform. And it doesn't replace, in-person contact. And certainly we all still need that. But yeah, I just think if you can find a way to say, like, I'm still in this community and my community is suddenly enormous in a way that it might not have been before, then that's a real positive.
Awesome. Montavis, how about you?
Well, I don't have anything upcoming, but I keep writing. I keep writing every single day. I continue to try to make as many conversations as I can, be a good listener to whoever's willing to share anything, listen to music. And like I said, I wait for the opportunities, and whenever I, get an opportunity, I try to prepare and do my best.
Thank you so much. And I think what's, so interesting too is about having this virtual forum, like you guys said, we're able to have someone from California, someone, and people in South Carolina in different areas all here together. I think that's one of the positive things that's come out of the pandemic is being able to do these virtual events. I mean, I can't believe we've been doing Carolina Poets for 2 years now. And then there's also the whole wonderful community of open mics out there that are virtual now that have really grown during the pandemic as well. So that's been really great to see. Well, I think we're going to get ready to wrap up, but if y'all want to give a shout out to anybody or mention anything else that you want to promote before we get off.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Keith Flynn, who's going to be reading soon. So you guys check on Keith's reading. Annette Clapsaddle, lots of people who are doing great things over there. And I think people are going to be calling you, Montavis, after hearing you read. I think you'll be getting some readings coming up. So I'm glad you're ready for that. And it's beautiful to hear about Sarah Montavis read tonight. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Carolina Poets.
Yeah, thank you. I just will reiterate, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be in both of your company, Montavis and Allison, and Kimberly, as always, a deep pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Awesome.
I want to thank all three of you just for the time and opportunity. Allison, your work is amazing. Sarah, your poetry is really inspirational. I actually like just the different tricks throughout the stanzas that I heard. Allison, I like just your structure and just the different ways you went about writing certain phrases and words, your punctuation skills. That's a lot of things I heard. As far as my shout outs, my mother, of course, Tanisha. I know she's watching. She's my biggest fan since the first poem. Demetria, my girlfriend, Kendra Lyles. I hope I said her last name right, but she's watching, and Kelly Williams, and just everyone who just takes the time to support me. I look forward to the journey. I want to be right there where you two are, and it's just so much that I've learned from this experience and opportunity tonight. And I just want to say thank you, and once again to Carolina Poets. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Well, thank y'all again. We will be back here on March the 31st. We're doing a special event for the Trans Day of Visibility. So we're going to have 3 trans artists on the show March 31st. So tune in here for that. Thank you again to Allison, Sarah, Montavis. It's funny, there's actually some poets on my porch right now because we're getting ready to have practice for the slam team. I'm going to go let these poets in my house. But thank y'all all for being a great audience. Please follow us on Carolina Poets and definitely check out the YouTube channel. Everybody have a great night.
Good night.